Hi there, good afternoon and good morning and welcome to our second in a series of webinars focusing on secure identity management and the opportunities for international travel. This webinar focuses on commercial viability of customer-centric ownership and management of identity. Quite a mouthful, otherwise known as self-sovereign identity. And the aim of our conversation today is to explore the key considerations to approaching this realm and unraveling the raw potential of truly knowing and connecting with our customers. So to do this, I've got an auspicious group of individuals, which I'll introduce to you very shortly. But first of all, I'll give you a bit of a background and get the mental juices running really, and thinking about how all this fits together in today's world. So the reality is we've taken a big hit with COVID and the industry in many ways is on its knees. It's far from easy and money is incredibly tight. And these are the simple truths. So we've got a choice. We can just sit back and we can wait for everything to get back to normal. Probably not the right thing to do. Instinctively, that tells me that it's not right. And we need, and it's necessary to start talking about a new normal, an incredibly challenging and competitive environment too, where every customer will be fought for. And with that in mind, endearing loyalty is going to become more and more crucial for those customers and for organizations who want to attract them. So what must we do in order to win this battle then, to win over customers? Well, we could improve the food on board, maybe a slightly more expensive bottle of wine. We could improve the premium seating, a bit more space, a comfier cushion. We could improve the health and safety in the airport. Could improve the confidence in which customers have to actually travel and knowing what they've got to do. We could improve our customer data and the journey preparation that customers go through. We know that putting the customer at the heart of all we do is in no doubt a sensible approach to take. But if we take that even further and put the customer and their data in a place where they have complete control of their data, where it goes and how it's used, does this not leave the travel industry and those big companies high and dry? We'll dig into this today and discuss how self-sovereign approach aligns with revenue-driven agendas, especially in a incredibly competitive world that we've got ourselves in today. And we'll find out what we need to do when approaching this challenging time and this new technological approach as well. The industry talks of change and customer centricity, seamless journeys and frictionless experience. Some inroads have been made and there are people here on the screen today who have been key to that. But I would suggest that a true paradigm shift has yet to come. What needs to change? And what's in it for the customer? To discuss this in more detail, I have three outstanding speakers who cover a vast array of experience in travel, from the commercial right the way through to the operational. So I'm just going to quickly introduce these three amazing people to you, and then I'm going to give them each 5 minutes to introduce themselves. And then from there, we'll get into the discussion itself. What I'll do as well is I'll let you know that there is a Slido channel open. So if you've got the Slido app or if you go to the Slido website, you can tap in the event code 69245 and you can submit questions there and you can vote on other people's questions. And if there's something that's really, really pertinent and important that you want to be asked, put it in there and we will make sure that those questions come out during this morning / this afternoon's event. So let me introduce you to our three amazing panelists. First of all, we've got Liliana Petrova. So she's the founder and CEO of the Petrova Experience. She's bringing focus to the needs of the customer. She's about customer experience and how the customer works both in the digital but also the physical world. I met Liliana, first of all, in her JetBlue days in New York, JFK, where she had just instigated the big change for JetBlue in Terminal 5. It was a pretty fantastic and monumental change that you achieved there. It made me very jealous as well of what you managed to do. We've also got Randall Darby as well. Randall is the founder and the CEO of Airporter, and he brings experience of of starting new business models and new ways of thinking and operations to light in a highly regulated and logistically complex world. No mean feat, but he's shown true determination and pluck in managing to achieve what he has achieved so far. Plenty more to come there. And lastly, we've got Benoit, and Benoit is the Director of Business Development at CETA, and he's going to talk to us and share some of those strains that he's seeing from those lofty heights of CETA, where he's got a view of both the smaller airlines and organizations, but also the big players in there as well, and bringing all that together on an international stage in a consistent way. So those are the three guys that we've got. So let me, first of all, let's turn to Liliana. Liliana, why don't you describe a little bit about what you do, but also how important the customer experience is and what we should be considering when it comes to personal identity, data, and potentially self-sovereign identity too.
Thank you. I definitely feel the juices running. So thank you for this phenomenal intro. We're a company that is driven by the passion to create better experiences in the travel world, but not only for the customer. What does that mean? We look at different industries, be it healthcare, be it travel, be it education, and we think through the lens of the stakeholders of these entities. In this case, if I work with an educational institution, I would go and look at the institution from the lens of a student experience and what the student needs are, and advise an educational institution how to operationalize their technology and their process and procedures to serve that student. For airports and airlines, of course, this is the traveler and the passenger, or who we call a customer in JetBlue. And that is very important distinction, because the reason JetBlue, one of the reasons JetBlue was so successful at keeping loyalty high and being that most loved brand in the United States, was because they really considered the customer being the leading factor of the design of everything they did, be it process, training, procedures, or data. Going back to your data question, for a self-sovereign identity, I think one of the first steps that needs to be taken seriously is education. People today are extremely afraid and they of what the data is doing after they give it and what people are doing with their information. If you speak with anybody, there are kind of a couple of camps. One are the people that say jokingly or not really, haha, like I sold myself, I gave my data, which again implies they don't actually have faith or trust that their data is being respected. And you have the other camp of people who say, oh, no, I don't want to do this because I don't know what these people are doing with my data. So for a successful implementation of anything that's data-driven and that gives the power of the consumer to manage, we need to start with a serious educational and simplified educational communication campaign to explain what that means, what it means for the customer, what it means for the entity, and what are the benefits for the customer or the end user receiving the benefits from this data. Another thing I think that's critical is also having that customer centricity mindset when we form our partnerships. In other words, when we go in the world of designing more complex systems, we still need in the design of these systems to keep in mind that there is a customer out there that is anxious about what's going to happen with the data and respect that. Every time we have done something more complex in our world, we've spent numerous hours fine-tuning our agreements and not just going one quick shot at here's what I need, here's what you need, but rather thinking also through the consumer lens and saying, okay, well, how would we communicate this complicated setup to the consumer? And how are we going to protect the data and express that expressively to the consumer so they have faith in us? This is extra work. And it is a lot of kind of this, I hate to use the word design thinking because it's kind of overused, but it is a way of a mindset. It's like a customer mindset that we all need to have in order to make such a complex sell, like the sell to data usage, free data usage of a consumer data. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you, Liliana. That was really insightful. I think it's a good challenge as well. We can in this industry be very guilty of not seeing the wood for the trees. We think we understand it, we think we know it, but we're not actually in that place of where that individual is. And when it comes to self-sovereign identity, it'd be very easy again to get stuck in and around the technology and knowing how that works, but not to step back and take it from the outsider looking in. It was indeed my wife told me off the other day for talking about self-sovereign identity. She said, no one knows what you're talking about, this SSI concept. You need to find different words because it's immediately mind-blowing. So there is a challenge there that we do indeed need to find the right terms for it. We need to convey the right trusts around it and then be able to explain what are the benefits to the customer. So thank you very much, spot on. Benoit, let's go top right, and let's come to Benoit at CETA. Why don't you just shed some light on it from your perspective on what you're seeing in the industry?
Thanks, Raul. Thanks, Liliana. Of course, we're seeing a different kind of conversation happening, but they all tend to be with airlines and airports talking a lot about cost reductions and also, rightly so, looking at what we can do differently because of the current environments. And so this current situation that we all live in is a way to potentially accelerate a lot of the transformation. So we do have a lot of transformation conversations and how we can look into the way technology can help do things in a different way. And I think the third trend on top of that is, yes, there are airlines and airports looking at how to create new business models and new business opportunities, new ways of building revenues. And I think that's also where we need to look into the full potential of the topic today. Pretty much as you put the small airports and the big airlines, the big airports, the small airlines all together. And I think it's true not only in Europe, the region where I work, all the requirements are converging. It's how we can use the technology in a different way, but it's also how we can efficiently use that technology. And I think that when you bring together the needs of everyone, well, the notion of how we can reuse what people already have, the assets, the people, but how you can also share the benefits, potentially leveraging a platform approach rather than building everything from scratch, is also a very hot topic that we are hearing on the markets these days. So the way I would see a number of stepping stones to really promote the usage of SSI and self-sovereign identity is really keeping this strongly in mind as a great way to bring together the beauty of the biometrics, the identity, the better use of data for a greater passenger experience, but also thinking, leveraging platform as a way to package the technology and collaborating as a community. We will only get there if we are able to work together in a different and smarter way.
Fantastic, thank you, Benoit. A good call to arms there as well about collaboration in that space.
By the way, that's something we talked about in 2015. So Benoit, how is that collaboration going? Because I haven't seen much of that. Do you see that there is a change in the mood?
I think so, yeah. And we can maybe talk specifically about some examples where, airports and airlines are maybe not fighting for data anymore as they used to be.
That is a revolution in itself, Raul.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's dig into that in a moment. But I want to give Randall the opportunity just to share some of his experience as well. So he's come as the little guy into the big field of big guys playing and has had to try and crack into the market. So maybe reflect a little bit in your experience there about the approaches you've taken, and are there lessons we can take from what you've done that help us to change our settings, especially where the industry is stuck in its ways? Over to you, Randall.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Raul, and for the lofty introduction. I was going to say, you'll probably note that today I'm going to talk a little bit about baggage, and you'll be thinking, why is this guy talking about baggage? Is he in the wrong forum? Is he in the wrong session? But trust me, it will all come together. But I think the sort of theme that Raul posed there is one that's already been touched on so far in this session, which is really interesting, that these situations like the one that we're seeing at the moment with COVID, where things go from being a nice to have, exploration to need to have, and what that can do to drive innovation and collaboration between all the different stakeholder groups, I think it's something that could be really, really quite powerful. And you asked, if I could share some of my experiences. I think we lived this and, worked against it for many, many years, in that I think we kind of went out very early on, probably a little bit before our time, with quite an ambitious vision that was to take various steps that happen in an airport and to mobilize them using the latest technologies and put them in the hands of, vetted and trained drivers, and effectively enable a customer to now check in a bag from their doorstep and have it securely delivered onto their plane, doing some data sharing, enabling those bags to be cleared through customs in destination and delivered onto the customer's end location. And certainly when we first started talking about that, people thought we were crazy. People sort of said, oh, it's never going to work, or your challenges are too high. And, we just worked away at it again and again and again. And we kept pushing the partners, and we kept pushing that collaboration, and we kept figuring out ways to adapt what we were doing to the current needs across the industry. And what was really cool is over the life cycle of the product, and we actually first launched our product in the UK with British Airways in 2017. That's actually how Raoul and I first came across each other. And what's been really cool is over the life cycle of the product, it's been making that shift from nice to have to more of a need to have. And before COVID really kind of kicked in, we were already seeing growing adoption of off-airport bag collection, check-in, delivery solutions for other reasons. The industry was facing quite a widespread capacity challenge. There simply wasn't the infrastructure to support the number of passengers that were traveling. And it goes back to my vision in the first place, was quite simple. If you remove the bag from the equation, then the fluidity of passenger movement, mobility in getting from a city center to an airport, the speed at which you can get through an airport itself, is significantly changed and enhanced. And over that period of time, whilst we were push, doing what we were doing, it was like the operators, and massively helped by bodies like IATA and ACI, starting to talk about the capacity challenge and how removing bags from the equation and getting those processed away from the airport and in advance could be a big enabler to that. And so, as I say, in the life cycle of the product, we kind of we made that shift from nice to have to need to have. And I think that's strengthened further by COVID, where you've now got queue management, you've got less infrastructure, you've got mandates from governments to reduce contact in terminals. And all of this actually is at odds with the customer experience. So how do you do all of this whilst installing confidence in people to fly? And I think, again, that's why there's so much stuff coming out now from bodies like IATA, which is great, just in terms of talking about the place that off-airport advanced processing, mobile apps, contactless travel, and technologies all have a massive place in the design of the customer experience of the future. And I think the challenge is, and especially in this environment, because over the last few months, we've really been doing a lot of business development with partners, and I think it's Benoit who sort of said, the big challenge is who's going to pay for all of this stuff, and especially when there's been such a significant economic fallout of this situation, I think that is a big question. We developed a business model that was all based on customer pay per use, where the traveler has a very clear appetite to avoid queues and save time, and now travel in a safer way. And we've evidenced through our commercial partnerships, our results, our traction, generating revenue and repeat usage, that you can monetize that and you can drive a commercial return to the industry partners instead of this becoming a cost base. And we're very excited, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, to now be looking at how we can use those touch points that we've built with the customer to now do more on, for example, the doorstep around digital identity and data sharing to facilitate a truly bag-free, contact-free, and document-free journey for the passenger from origin to destination. So participating in sessions like this is just fantastic and really great timing, because I think the industry need is very much there right now.
Thank you, Randall. A good summary there of where you're up to and the experience you've had. So thank you for that. So coming off the back of what you've said there, and thinking about Liliana and your experience, your customer experience angle as well. When I look at air travel and I look at the overall customer journey, and there are these various steps that need to be undertaken that are regulated in many occasions as well. How do you think customers' perceptions are changing now when they look at not just that regulated set of steps, but now also the health and safety side of things on one angle, but also the health requirements, which is additional, invariably localized regulation as well. I've got to not only come to the airport to satisfy my departure process, which might need one of these certificates and something along those lines, but also got to fill in a form for my destination as well. What's the responsibility that all players in the industry have got to inform the customer and to get the customer to a place where they've got confidence to actually fly again? Liliana, do you want to reflect on that first?
Yeah, sure. I'm as you know, I'm very passionate about that. So we talk a lot about the consumer and the customer's confidence to come back to travel. And one thing that you open with that I share my passion for is the responsibility and whose it is. So we have as an industry choices to make right now. And the choice is either to stay back and just wait for somebody to tell us, what to do, how to do it, or actually take a stand ourselves and adapt and proactively create a customer flow and a customer experience. What Randall was saying also kind of made me remember the challenges we had in JetBlue to do something similar to what he's doing now. And the challenges always are that seams, like what you were saying earlier, the frictionless and seamless travel. These words have very specific meaning in customer experience design, because this is where the problems are. This is where the drop off of the experience quality is. And this is where all of our efforts should go. In other words, when I transition from a car to an airport, from an airport to a plane, and so on, whose responsibility is it to make sure that these transitions are seamless and that the customer doesn't feel like they're dropping from one place to another, or doesn't have to reset their expectations or their overall experience? So for me, and what I really think would happen here is the customers and the passengers who are best informed and kind of set up for success are the ones that will start traveling first. And what does that mean? That means information that is customer-centered and not information that is government-centered that's blasted out. What do I mean more specifically? When you go to a website of an airline or an airport, getting to read a CDC or any type of government-issued dense documentation doesn't necessarily instill confidence to pick up travel. Even more so, though, I think it brings anxiety, right? It feels very much kind of like a crisis mode and very, for lack of a better word, medical. And that's not what you associate when you travel. So when you go and read this, your anxiety probably would go up, not down. So that intentionality of managing that anxiety through all kinds of information that is more customer-centered. What does it mean? Well, put on some sort of an information of like, what does your airport require? What is the end-to-end journey? What are the things that the customer needs to know on their journey? If they're connecting on their travel, even putting a little blurb to say, is the connecting airport functioning today? Is there food there? All these things matter. Just think about a mother going across, let's say from the States to Europe with their child and now not knowing anything about what's coming up. These are things that they are controllables, and they are the responsibility of the airline and airport industry to address right now. And they have the opportunity to do, because they have time and they have that collaboration Benoit is talking about. So how about you have this cross-functional team meeting with all the carriers on your airport, when all of you talk about the passengers that you're sharing and the communication that is coming to that. So there you go. This is my take.
That's great. So off the back of that, then, Liliana, I'll come to Benoit, really. So from that kind of CETA point of view, where you've got a lot of people and a lot of airports, a lot of airlines all involved in that, is there a convergence of information and these sort of things, so that from any particular client point of view who are interacting with the customer, they can get hold of this information from a single set of sources? Or is it still a bit sort of, I've got to go over here to this government for that bit of information, over here to this organization for that other bit of information? Are you seeing a convergence of this sort of information that can help answer some of these anxieties?
So I think we see a convergence of needs for sure. Do we really see the best convergence we can get in terms of alignments and strategies? I'm not sure we're there yet. We could really do better. From a technology standpoint, the requirements are converging, and we try to use the tricks of bringing the information together, normalizing the way you consume those pieces of information as much as we can from interfaces, so that from an operation standpoint, when an airline wants to create an app or update their passengers with the information of the connecting flights, then they consume this information update in a pretty consistent way, I would say. So I would say the short answer is at the technology level, we are trying to do our best really to aggregate and normalize the way you can consume these pieces of information, and COVID information is an example. What kind of index can be consumed, for example, what are the latest flight update details, so that you can really normalize the way and create a single experience. The one thing which I'm not really sure, Raul, if I may, is on the convergence of the engagements, and how governments and airlines and airports are really engaged in working together as a triangle on that. I think we can do better, probably.
Yeah, you're quite right, Benoit, and we actually discussed on our first webinar that aspect, that the governments really are driven by a domestic agenda primarily in order to keep their population safe, and that has led us to a point where you've got a lot of disparate and separate avenues being taken. As you can understand, the challenge now is to try and bring that back together. So it's good to hear that there are technological ways in which we can solve some of these problems, but they do need to.
Can I ask, Raul, do you think that this is where IATA should come, like an organization that is representing travel regardless of a country, or like?
Yes. Yes, you're quite right, and we have had those discussions as well. So we had Celine from IATA on our last call talking to that effect. There needs to be good convergence there on that information, and as Benoit hinted towards, some of this data and some of the information is changing on a weekly or even daily basis, and so it's if we don't have a single source of truth, then the divergence and the confusion, and therefore the anxiety from the passenger point of view, will go up and up. So let's spin it back round. Let's spin it back to identity. If we head down this self-sovereign route, and we know who the individual is, so we've got that, if you like, locked in, that actually my data is known, my data is good, and I permissioned that data. What's the ultimate benefit to me by making sure that that data is good and starts to flow through various systems? Randall, I'll come to you, because I know you've been knocking on this door a little bit from the point of view of, I can do more than just pick up bags at a doorway. I can do, or at someone's house, I can do more. So so if I've got good data, how does that help your world, and then downstream through the whole journey?
Yeah, and I think just before I kind of go on to that, it's probably worth me just sharing some of my experiences being an early stage company. As you say, I take no offense at it, the small guy in a very big pond full of big fishes. We almost designed our product in the first instance to be totally independent of the airline airport data processing environment, because that was the only way that we could move quickly enough to get a product to market, to test it with real users, consumers, and to get them, get enough traction to be able to then go back to the airlines and say, look, this is really working. Please get it more integrated so that we can enhance the overall product offering. And that has taken time. And so, yeah, I just thought it was worth sharing that experience. Like we had to build something that was almost totally independent. And that's great from an agility standpoint, but it's not great from getting to a, should we say, a fully integrated, very seamless user experience, which is the direction that we're now headed in. And with a lot of our partners now, we're getting more heavily integrated. So, for example, we recently became a full Amadeus certified integration partner, and now we're kind of opening up all sorts of different product features to the end user. And I think the whole sovereign identity piece and biometrics and how that can be, if you take the bag out of the equation, that can be done. We have a unique touch point with the user, which is at their house in the comfort of their own home on their doorstep. And you can take aspects of that sort of, if you want to call it a process, turn it into a customer experience and do those on the doorstep, so that a customer and their data and the processing of that can begin even before they hit the airport. And then, obviously our area of speciality is very much then in removing the bag so that the customer can travel, without those bottlenecks, avoiding those bottlenecks and that stop-start motion throughout the journey. And I see if we can do that very high quality to a standard that's accepted by governments around the world, data capture on doorstep and throughout the chain, and be sharing that downstream with partners that cover, for example, the other end of the journey to advance risk assess those users, those customers who are choosing to use a product like this, then absolutely it can facilitate a much speedier process when they land. They can avoid the wait at the baggage reclaim. They can have an expedited process through customs, and all this stuff can be done. And I know firsthand, because as we tried to move from a product business to a commercial entity that generated returns for our partners, we did a lot of work around the constant re-entry of data for a customer in the travel experience. And with our own product in many areas, we've tried to reduce that, and it has a significant impact in adoption and usage, and obviously a customer's inclination to keep using that solution. And so I think the more that the industry can move to a standardization and a single point of data entry and kind of data sharing down the chain, not only is it going to give people the confidence to fly, but yeah, I think it will open up all these other opportunities to them, and it will remove some of those barriers that they have to think about each time around re-entering their data, which just turns people off. So yeah, it can only be a very good thing.
Yeah. So let's take that up a gear then. So I'll come back to Benoit. We've now got good data flowing through the system. What's the potential? Where could this potentially go? What haven't we talked about, or what's not being discussed, where there's huge opportunity?
I think it has to go with the creation of new business models and new revenues, and probably look at the passenger experience end to end, including the retail space. When you look at the intersection between airlines and airports, it's very often that we've seen airlines and airports fighting for the passenger and fighting for the ownership of the passenger data, for example. And if probably with the current times that we're living, airlines and airports can no longer afford to fight for the information details on the passenger, and maybe they should work together and start exchanging insights. Flight details for an airline that would like to know maybe exact times of departure, and as well as a bit more details on the expected passengers for an airport that would like to be able to anticipate the resources that need to be scheduled. And at the end of the day, an airport and an airline need to work together, so that instead of fighting for the passenger, they would actually work together, and both of them working together, then they would create new insights, new opportunities, a new experience for the passenger, and also new revenues. And that's probably a way to look into the commercial potential.
And so with those new revenues, are there new revenue shares that you're thinking about there as well, or is there still a bit of a scrap as to who gets the pounds and pennies?
Not clear yet. I think you need to be open to the principle that if you sit at the same table and you bring the right people and you bring the people with an IT angle that have a good technical understanding of the data sets, and you bring also the process people and the revenue managers of all parties, then you can sort out at least a scenario and a number of use cases where we will discover after a while that everyone is winning. And then after this experience, we can decide how we share the opportunity. At least, this is the new momentum that could be created, and those tables can happen, and those data conversations should happen. They used to be pretty much in the pre-crisis environment. They were very fragmented. Those conversations were happening piecemeal with one airline or one airport, the dominant airport or the main airline. But they were not happening as a table of conversations looking at the full potential. And this might be the opportunity right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think a new perspective and a new approach that tries to blank out a bit of what we've done before and creates a different perspective is essential. It's a reflection really on the industry again, and it's a story I often use that this industry around air travel is so stuck in, if you like, the dark ages. We still use PNRs. We still have this 6 alphanumeric code which represents our booking. The reality is that passenger name locator, that code actually refers back to the very first hard drives that existed, and it was the physical location on the disk of where your booking was stored. That's when airlines were really in that technological revolution, when those first connections across the world were made using digital solutions. Unfortunately, we're still there using these same codes. We've really got to break our mindset and our mold and come at things afresh. So your provocation there, Benoit, is spot on, and I think that goes right the way up to how you view retail, how you view revenue, and you start to collaborate in a different way, thinking about what the overall potential is. Just a reminder to our audience as well that Slido is open, so we'll get the code up on the bottom of the screen. There it is, 69245. So if you have got questions and you want to push Benoit, Randall, or Liliana on any aspect, then please do put your question in there, and we'll get it back to them. What I'd like to do though is come back round to customer loyalty. So we're fighting here for customers. We want them to fly potentially through our airport, through our airline, through our services that we provide. What is it as we move forward now into this post-COVID world? What is it that defines loyalty? What is it that makes me sticky to a brand, to an offering? What is it? How do we need to change the thinking that we're doing? And is something that sits around self-sovereign, is it congruous with that? Does it actually work well with that, or is it almost anti-loyalty in some way? That's an open question to whoever wants to take it there.
I'll start this one because I actually think it's connected with your previous question of what is in it for the customer with the sovereign identity. Loyalty really will be connected with who offers you safe, confident, secure, seamless journey. Now, what does that mean? If you are able to really kind of take that identity capture at the first touch point that Randall is capturing, let's say I'm an airline that uses Randall's product and I am a customer of that airline and I give my identity. Now, if the airline and the airports are partnering together, and again, the revenue share model will leave to Benoit to figure out the attribution model, I'm just going to tell you what would bring a lot of loyalty. If that revenue model is figured out on the back end, now as a customer, I can, and these are all things we've thought about in JetBlue, so this is not science fiction, right? I can get a push notification in my app or my text messages that tells me that there is some traffic jam and that I need to leave earlier for my airport. I can enter the airport and be told that there's no queues and I have time to go to the restroom or I have to rush there. I can be told where I have to change my baby if I have a baby. I can be told when it's my time to board so I don't sit by the boarding gate like a dog going back and forth. And I can be reminded of any of the safety and security stuff. Sorry, something's happening here. Like you know, please remember you don't need to have water in your bags and all that stuff that TSA needs. I can pre-order drinks on the flight. I can be booked on the same favorite seat that was captured by the airline before. I can also potentially, depending on the aircraft model, book and buy the movie I want to see. I can also buy a Heathrow Express ticket while I'm in the air or book my Uber. I can do all of this stuff. That is the value. And whoever gets that, and all of this is out there, you know, Benoit can help you string this. They have a blockchain team. You have Randall here that can get the bags. It is just that creativity of the thinking. And I don't know, I think the breadth of like what a customer actually can go through in how many it's essentially creating new touch points that don't exist today that are connecting those seams. And whoever gets that will get the loyalty of the customer, and the customer will pay even double for that. I have been told by other customers, not in the airline industry, who have told me, if anybody figures this out, how I can stress-free travel, I will pay $5,000 for a coach ticket. I heard this last week. So it is there, but nobody's capturing it, and I don't know why.
Thank you, Liliana. I think you're spot on in your analysis there. There's a lot of talk around this, but there's not enough actual action. The potential's there. By way of example, if I book a flight with most airlines, if I'm doing short haul, I'll be asked to come to the airport 2 hours before. If I'm booking long haul, it'll be 3 hours before. Well, I know through traveling a lot that I can get away with 60 minutes before. You know, that's my own internal, for both, yes, monologue that tells me actually experience that says that I can do that. But if I'm known as a customer and I'm known and my history is known, surely my arrival time can be planned down to the minute. Yes, there might be delays and traffic incidents and so on and so forth, but that can occur anyway. Why are we not personalizing down at that level? So let's look back again at loyalty, because I know I challenged Randall on this. I said, look, from the point of view of self-sovereign identity, if I create an app that has self-sovereign identity in it, and through that app, I've got someone onboarded and they've got the right data now, and all that sort of stuff is good. Should I be worried about giving that data potentially away to other parties who are part of the journey? Or should I take a different perspective around loyalty that is a lot closer to what you're talking about, I think, Liliana, which is about more around the experience drives the loyalty rather than the commercial aspects. And I think this is into your sweet spot, Randall, in terms of your repeat customers. So maybe you can reflect on this a little bit about the balance that needs to be had.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think if you need to install trust, and I think that was definitely, again, one of our kind of uphill challenges as a business where we first came to market, and we sort of said, hey, we can pick up a bag from your doorstep and securely, reliably, you know, get it delivered straight into the system. You get your bag tags now fully digitalized. Don't worry, they'll be there. It takes time to kind of build that customer trust and confidence, and not only that, it kind of requires the solutions, be those software-based solutions, the products, the services, to become, I guess, widely adopted by the airlines, the airports, the end users, and that really, you know, eventually to become something that's available to users on a very much global scale, for them to sort of see that solution and to kind of go, yes, I know that that's going to work, and that's a big movement. It takes time, and that's why I think having a push for standardization across the industry for these kinds of things is needed. And I think when we were talking the other day, Raoul, you sort of said, you know, what's as Airporter who's kind of creating a market, if you like, creating a new product, creating a new user experience, you know, how do we feel about competition or arguably that intellectual property or that know-how that we develop? How do we feel about that being replicated by other players, which could come as a consequence of that standardization? Because ultimately, if we're sharing all our learnings quite publicly, and you know, even with bodies like IATA, so that they can publish those to almost speed up the whole development of similar services in airports and airlines, how do we feel about that? And I think I said to you, at the end of the day, these concepts are so big, and historically there's been so many challenges that stop them from coming to market or customers widely adopting them. And this situation can be a catalyst to kind of almost open source it, get it out there. And then it comes down to confidence in the user experience, the customer products that you develop, knowing that they're awesome, they're valued by customers. There is that stickiness. They repeat because you have the best digital experience in the market, and you give the end user something that they can't get anywhere else. Like doing their whole digital identity enrollment at home, getting the bags out of the equation at a speed and cost that can't be achieved anywhere else, giving them that feeling of just sheer delight when they fly. Those are the things that you have to have confidence in, and that means that you have to be less concerned about the kind of competitive threat in the market. And I think one of the things that I always find is a really good example of that is Elon Musk, when he kind of made all of Tesla's patents when it comes to charging like open source. And I think I read an article that said he's doing this to save the world, because it was all about kind of making that intellectual property available to speed up the infrastructure development, because otherwise these things can't get to a stage quick enough where they become a utility and widely adopted. And that's just so critical. And then, as I say, to build user experiences that just drive people to come back and embed it in their journey, which we've done successfully, albeit with quite a lot of time and effort at Airporter. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, definitely helpful, Randa. There's good provocation as well, that there is this social aspect to bring into the thinking about how people are actually interacting with the experience. And certainly from my experience, personally using apps and things like that, it's almost the first few seconds of experience in an app that starts leaning me one way or the other, and might reinforce or not. So the experience has got to deliver. We had a question come through from Frank. He doesn't say where he's from, but he asked the questions about digital identity. And the question, which I think I'll come to Benoit, I don't know whether you've got visibility of this, saying actually through something like digital identity and self-sovereign, will we see a closer link between travel agencies and airlines and potential new revenue shares? And Frank mentions as well the potential to beef up NDC, new distribution channels. So can you still have what the airlines are longing for in that direct route, certainly from a servicing and operational point of view, but also allowing the travel agency route in as well, where they might be doing other stuff from the customer journey before or even after the flight segment? Have you had experience in that at all? And can you see some potential?
So thank you for the question, Frank. I'm not sure if I can really comment on the revenue share model yet, but I do think that there is really in some of the conversations we're having, joining the dots not only between the airlines and the airports, but also taking into account the travel agencies. For example, as you start having those synergies around better sharing of data, building better experience, building better loyalty for the passenger at airports for an airline, there is that whole notion of having anticipation, visibility on the airport product that is available, and not just only the airline products. And if you're in the journey of trying to join the dots of that experience, not only the experience at the airport, but also anticipating the experience, like Randall is talking about the home experience as well, and also the off-airport experience after the flights, you start joining the dots, and you have to include in that ecosystem not only the airport and the airlines, but also the agencies. And NDC somehow is shaping from an airline perspective and creating a way to go in terms of how you standardize the way you describe your content, including the airport content, and probably a lot of things from the NDC exchange and can be reused as well to maximize the potential.
Yeah, thank you, Benoit. Good insight. We've got some questions coming in thick and fast now, so we might chop and change in our direction. One that's just come in, actually from Peter Sutcliffe, so a colleague of yours, Benoit. How do we avoid converting
Hi, Peter.
siloed? How do we avoid converting siloed KYC experience into siloed self-sovereign identity KYC experiences? What do we need to do in and around that space to avoid just having silos rather than being on a server on people's apps and phones? I'll leave that open to anyone who wants to come in on that particular one. Depends how specialist you are in self-sovereign. If there isn't a direct answer, because I know it is quite specific, I think if nothing else, we leave that as a provocation to those watching as well. And there are a number of organizations in this space at the moment. We can't afford to see the problems of, just move to a new location. That's just substitutional. We need to be transformational in our intent, and to do that, we need to open the doors. So we need to share responsibly and securely with the customer in control. So that's our provocation back to us there. What I'll do though is I'll just scroll to another question that came in. Do bear with me. This one comes in from Graham Webb of ICM. So he's Graham I know from Heathrow. He put in a lot of machines that we've seen in Heathrow these days. So how does the industry educate passengers to make the most of these new solutions rather than the conventional airport experience? And to frame that, I'll go back to what I said before about this industry doesn't really change much. So how hard is it? Maybe I'll come to Liliana first of all, because you've had this firsthand with JetBlue. How hard is it to actually educate the customer that things have changed and they've changed for the better, and to expect that change and to trust that change as well?
Actually, it's not hard at all. It is a matter of creating a communication strategy and investing some money. When we used to have live events, I used to quote a situation in JetBlue when we did that lobby you mentioned earlier. And I came from the marketing group, and I went to my leader and I said, hey, I need to make a video. And she said, oh, how much money? I was like, I don't know, maybe 15,000. She's like, that much? Like, what? Why so much? And I was like, well, marketing costs money. It was really hard to convince her to do it. We did it. Then we launched the lobby. And then a day later, we got so many requests for speaking engagements to educate people around the world. She called me and she said, I hope you made this video. So bottom line, we just need to give it some money and respect that the marketing and communication people also need funding. And then we need to do infographics versus doing dense copy. And then we need to put some people we all trust to be the face of those campaigns, and to explain in short videos or short snippets what that means, what are the benefits. It's actually quite easy. There is a process, and there are professionals out there that can definitely do this. And it can be scaled to be a local campaign, or it can be a global campaign, depending on the objectives of these campaigns. But to be honest, it's a very fun work, and it's very much doable.
Can I just jump in at the end there, Raul, to kind of share some of my experiences coming from, I guess, the other side, where you've got a new product, new proposition. And I think it's just helpful to kind of share with the group some of the challenges that you face as like should we say, a new service or a new solution to help people travel more easily, is, as Liliana says, could be really, really easy to do. I mean, we build distribution channels with airlines that are all about getting the product in front of the customer at the right time, being persuasive, saying, hey, you know how you used to check in a bag at the airport? Well, that's rubbish. Now you can do it at home and have a much better experience. And so it should be easy, but this is where you kind of, once again, come up against the commercial rub where someone's got to pay for that. And, you kind of get this, we find you always get this kind of halo effect at the beginning. It's nice, it's new, it's exciting. You get a bit of a burst, and then you have to work really, really hard to kind of make sure that that is a reiterative message to the customer that sort of says, okay, this is not just a new product. This is something that's going to be here to stay, and you need to, take that leap, use it, try it, do it. And I think that's something that, if I'm really honest, working with big B2B partners and airlines and airports, like they don't necessarily, and I don't know, but they don't necessarily have the mind space to do that all the time. And so we expend a lot of energy, making noise about the fact that you can't just take your kind of month 6 adoption figures as like an indication as to what the actual value of the product is going to be in 12, 18, 24 months. And it's taken us a reasonable amount of time and data to be super persuasive on that. And unfortunately, a lot of new products won't make it that far because it's obviously difficult business, like starting a business and growing one. So in travel, you have to be able to kind of go the distance and build the data and get around those arguments and be persuasive and show people that it's not just that first burst. People aren't going to change the way they travel instantly. It's going to happen over time, and it's going to take repetition and persistence. So yeah, those are some of our experiences, and why you need to shout about new products and change. It doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely, and you've got to kind of like you much as you have done. You've got to keep churning away at that and producing the data, and data goes a long way. My experience in working in a large airline is that they're striving for consistency. So actually a new or a change to something, even as part of a trial, is not consistent with the rest of the product. But if you don't do these new products, then you're never going to change, and you're going to be stuck in the doldrums. So it's
the chasm between kind of innovation departments and business as usual, where quite often you just kind of like drop down that and die. So it's kind of
so other things, guys. I don't know what's your prize, but when we were doing this, there was a prize that we couldn't achieve, and that was the prize that the consumer was willing to pay in the US. Yeah. So it also, what you're referring to also is the pure selling and the viability of a product that is different from an educational campaign for sovereign identity, in a sense, like there is this pure education of like what is happening, what are the benefits, without talking about money. And then there is the next phase, which is let me convince you to pay for this. And hopefully you've struck that elasticity where there is enough demand.
Yeah.
And that's another area of just intensive work when you bring a product to market, trying to find that tipping point where you can hit the necessary volume. And yeah.
And by way of example, off the back of that, I read a great book called Loon Shots. That's LOON, not Moonshots. I'd recommend that, and it actually talks about our industry amongst other things as well. Well worth a read, quite provocative, and it talks about the franchise, that is how large organizations run, and how innovation is quite the opposite of that. So think of it as ice and water. Innovation departments are often quite small, and if you put that small amount of water next to ice, it will just freeze. And if you flip it around the other way, then you end up with just water. And to get both sat nicely in equilibrium is very, very hard. It's a good provocation to us. I'm very conscious of time, guys. We're down to our last 2 minutes now. So first of all, I just want to thank you, all three of you, for being with us this afternoon. Your insight is invaluable, and three really good and different perspectives. Just to remind everyone who's watching, we have got another webinar coming up in October, which says, okay, we've learned about the history, we've talked about the commercial aspects of self-sovereign identity as well, and great insight from these three guys here. Now's time to actually act and to do stuff. So we're going to bring some other heavyweights from the industry into that conversation about how we move forward. So taking the provocation that both Liliana and Randall has given us just now about moving forwards, taking that bold step, iterating on small amounts of experimentation, generating the data, building the business case for change, and then enacting on it. So thank you all. Thank you, Benoit, so much from your desk in Geneva. Thank you, Liliana, from your desk in New York, I think. Is that correct? Yes. And Randall from your desk in South London somewhere. And from me here in the suburbs of London, out a little bit, it's thank you all for attending today, and thank you to our audience. If you've got any further questions, and do get in touch with myself, very easy to find me. It's just raoul@zamna.com. Any other questions, any other provocation, or if you want to share in the future at a future webinar, happily take those as well. Let's all smile for Liliane. She's taking a photo.
I am. I have to do social post, guys.
We hope that we can see you all again soon. So thank you so much and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.